Good morning, everyone. It is September 8th, Tuesday, 19th of Elul. I hope everyone had a nice and enjoyable Labor Day weekend. And as we are now heavy in the throes of preparing for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, back to school. I know pretty much all the schools are starting today in one form or another. We're wishing everybody a very healthy and successful and productive school year, and let's hope that those that are in school can stay in school, and those that are not actually in school will get to go to school, but let's hope that we certainly come out of this soon. We sent out yesterday the very detailed information about Rosh Hashanah, which has been a tremendous amount of work just trying to make things work given our physical plant and our population. Again, we ask everybody to please not only adhere to the rules that are set forth, but also to advise us as to exactly who is coming, because we're very, very exact in the numbers, and we need to know down to the very last seat. We can't just assume that we have a tremendous amount of room, which is why when it comes to guests, we are first giving seats to Eitz Chaim members, and then if there is room for additional guests, we will see. That's to be determined. Again, it's based on your responses. And once the assignments go out, that's it. That's what it's going to be. There's not going to be any ability to change. Nobody can just show up. Again, just given the situation of how we're running our services, we're stretched pretty thin in terms of who's running the minyanim, davening, laning, blowing shofar, etc. So there's a lot of effort that goes into this. And again, I thank everybody for your cooperation and understanding as we try to navigate this sort of new and difficult territory. I just have to give you a warning. My allergies are really acting up today, so it's going to be a rough day for me, just in terms of breathing and whatnot. So today's the 19th of Elul, and I have to take you back exactly a year ago. A day that changed my life and my family's life almost irreparably, forever. So it was actually a few days before that we heard the very shocking loss that Kenny Weiss, our co-president, that his beloved father passed away over Shabbos. Dov Ben Avraham, we just observed the yard site the other day, and that was he was so well liked here, and he loved coming to our shul, always with a smile on his face, davening with his grandchildren, and again, his neshama should have an aliyah. It was a very, very difficult loss, not only, of course, for Kenny and Yana and the family, and for the Horn family, and for really everybody that knew him, but really for Eitz Chaim. So I remember one night my wife met me after work in Brooklyn. We went to make a shiva call, going to the old country, as it were, and we davened mincha marav there. We had a nice visit, and a few of us who were there, we stopped afterwards in Brooklyn to grab a bite to eat, and then we headed home. When we got home, ready for bed, went to sleep, I turned in, it must have been around midnight, and just then my phone rang. Now, in my profession, when the phone rings at 12 o'clock at night, that's never for a good reason. No one ever calls at midnight to say, Rabbi, I want to donate $100,000 to the synagogue. You don't get those calls at 12 a.m., maybe not even at 12 p.m. And when the phone rang and the words that came through on the other side, it's one of those phone calls you get that you don't believe that that's happening. Somebody called me and said, Gild Calter passed away. I said, what? Gilad died. He's on a business trip in Colorado, and he wasn't feeling well, and suddenly he collapsed, and they pronounced him dead a short while later. Now, let me just give you a little bit of the background. Who's Gild Calter? Many of you in our shul, we know who Gilad is, who Gilad was. One of my closest friends ever. He was in his early 40s, but the truth is that we became friends when he was already a teenager. One of the best jobs I ever had was the rabbi of Camp Rowley in Livingston Manor, New York, exit 96 off Route 17. My wife and I were just married, and we landed this job, so for 2 summers I was the rabbi of the camp. We ran all the educational programming, supervised all the kashrus, but more importantly, we developed relationships there that lasted for many, many years beyond camp. And there was this one sort of rambunctious, incorrigible type of youth who his job was driving around the laundry. He picked up all the laundry for the camp because they couldn't give him any responsible job because it was Gilad. But we realized that we hit it off. And we remained friends for many, many years. And it was actually Gilad's dear friend in camp, Dana, who ended up getting married, ended up having 3 beautiful children, Moshe, Bella, and Leo. And lo and behold, as it would have it, Gilad ends up moving to Atlantic Beach, spending the summers there, spending it in Atlantic Beach, buying a home there, and settling there year-round. So, needless to say, we very much reconnected. We became very close. Gilad and Sarah were sort of like kindred spirits, sort of had the same outlook on life. And Gilad would come to our shul's golf outing. He would come to all of our simchas. He was especially fond of coming to our pre-Pesach men's club, learning for the Haggadah preparation. And anyone who ever met him automatically fell in love with him. Like if you would go out to dinner with Gilad, you wouldn't get any, because everybody would always stop to talk to him because he knew everybody, and everybody knew him in a very, very good way. Not that anybody wanted anything from him, they just wanted to be around him. So you could just imagine the shocking news that midnight a year ago. So immediately I drove to Long Island to be with Dana and to try and figure out, and we had to make arrangements. And by Friday we were able to have the Levaya, and we had to then start life sort of without Gilad. And you're talking about, watching, when Moshe would come to us for Shabbos a few times, but you're talking about watching a young boy who's, just bar mitzvah, having to recite Kaddish for his father. Or a young girl who's 8, 9 years old, trying to find her way of like figuring out how should I react to this. Or Leo, who's just really, really young, and wondering if he'll ever remember his father. And then, of course, there's Dana. And Dana, who has to keep it all together all the time. We used to joke that she had 4 children because Gilad was like a big child. But, she was the glue of the family, and she keeps everything together. And now, having to, to move forward and to do so without him, it's just something that, seemed like, how does this even happen? And here we are a year later. A year later. And what a year it's been. We remarked in Shul this week that the reason why we read the Tochacha is before Rosh Hashanah, as we say, Tichla Shana V'Kil Lo Zeha, that may this year end with all of its curses. Please, please let all these curses end, because I can't imagine that it could be any worse than this. Losing your best friend, having the world shut down, not being able to go to Shul for so long. But here we are a year later on the yard site. And I want to just reflect on what I've learned, and I want to do so through the following sort of analogy, something I read recently. There's a book called No Hero by Mark Owen, who is a Navy SEAL, and he teaches us this mantra called the 3-foot mantra. And he talks about how in his training they had to scale these sort of mountain rocks. And he writes as follows: I was officially stuck. I couldn't go any higher. To be honest, I didn't want to. For the first time since I started to climb, I took my eyes off the rock face in front of me and started to look around. I was pretty high up. I could see the Las Vegas Strip and the desert stretching all the way to the horizon. I glanced down and saw Jeff, now a lot smaller. He looked like a garden gnome. Any chance I had of keeping my fear in control was slipping away, a lot like my hold on the rock. I wished I was somewhere else as I looked up in the crystal blue sky. I was nervous. I could feel myself losing focus on where my hand and foothold should be. But all I could think about was that cold rock face, how high I was off the ground, and the instructor climbing up to me without a rope. I could also hear Jeff on the ground yelling up to me. You need me to climb up there and save you, he said in a sarcastic tone. I struggled to find a new handhold, but my fingers were tired. I'm about to slip and fall, I thought. To my left, I heard something scrape against the rocks. I'd been so focused on my situation that I'd forgotten all about our instructor. I'd catch him climbing around like Spider-Man as he waited for me to see the next cam, to set the next cam. It made me nervous watching him because he didn't use a rope. Hey man, he said in a lazy, raspy voice. Or he'd be like, hey man, just stay in your 3-foot world. I was a couple of 100 feet up the rock face and I could barely think, let alone decipher his cryptic advice. What are you talking about, bro? Only focus on your 3-foot world, he said. Focus on what you can affect. You keep looking around and none of that stuff can help you right now, can it? I shook my head no. You're calculating how far you're going to fall, the instructor said. You're looking down at Jeff, but he's not going to come up and help. Don't look at me. I'm not going to help you either. This is up to you. You're climbing this rock. Stay in your 3-foot world. I'll never forget those words. Stay in your 3-foot world. We spend a lot of time thinking about what we could have done differently in the past, how far we're going to affect the future. And maybe during this time of year, when we're reflecting on tshuva, let's think about our 3-foot world. What is it that you can do immediately in front of you to affect a positive change? Gilad was very much like that. He always thought about big things, but he always wanted to do one step at a time, what was right in front of him. He didn't need the accolades and the approbations of everyone around him. He wanted to do what was right for him at that moment. And one of those things that he decided, and we actually used to study together, he said, you know, I want to learn Gemara. And it was pointed out at the Levaya that he started learning Gemara Brachos. He would always call me with questions. And he got up to Daf Lamed Beis. Lamed Beis, which is Lev, and ultimately it was his heart that gave out. What can you do to affect change? And I have to tell you that it's because of Gilad and in memory of Gilad that I took it upon myself after going to the Siyum HaShas. I said, you know what? I want to finish what he started. So I started learning Daf Yomi, which is a little bit every single day. It's not for the whole world, and I probably won't remember everything that I learn, but I want to be able to say that, you know what, I want to try to do a little bit at a time. And that's really what I've learned during this past year. I've dealt with loss before, and I've dealt with challenges, but you know, this one was so personal, and this one was so painful. And I tell it to people all the time, and I found myself telling it to myself, you know, put one foot in front of the other. One step at a time. Stay in your 3-foot world. We're not going to fix all the big problems in one sitting, and we're not going to change the past, that's for sure. Stay in our 3-foot world. Stay in what we would call in halacha, stay in your Daled Amos. Stay in your 4 cubits. And if we're able to do that, then you'd be surprised of how much we can improve, how much we can change over time. The pain of losing my dear friend, my brother, Shmuel Gilad ben Avraham HaKohen, I don't know that will ever go away. And the angst and the sorrow that I feel for Dana and for Moshe and for Bella and for Leo and for the rest of the family and for everybody that knows and loves him is something that I don't think I'll ever get over. But I know that, you know what, time goes on and we don't forget, we do one step at a time. We take our 3-foot world and we try to navigate within that. So on this very sad day for our family, a day that we commemorate and we think of one of the greatest losses we've ever known, we talk about staying in our 3-foot world. And that's something to think about as we go into Rosh Hashanah. Especially this year where Rosh Hashanah is going to be very different. And instead of spending time thinking about, you know, how everybody could be doing this, that, and the other, just think about what it is that you can be doing for yourself within your own world and how you can contribute. So again, may the neshama of Shmuel Gilad ben Avraham HaKohen have an aliyah. Gilad will always be so sorely missed. Please enjoy the pictures that are attached to the email. My friend, my brother, my confidant, my chavrusa, and someone that will never, ever be forgotten. Again, may the neshama have an aliyah, and we'll come together and we'll celebrate simchas and better things, and we'll see you again here very soon.